Today on Executive Report, we're meeting with Kevin Johnson. He'll tell us his unique story of transitioning from a life of crime into building a successful therapy business. So hit that like button and subscribe. Hello, everyone. Today we are joined with Kevin Johnson, the founder and CEO of Real Life Changes LLC. He has got an amazing story about how he started all the way back into 7th grade, how he ended up in a life of crime, and his words became a felon. And then through the support of family and faith, he was able to transition and start a business that is extremely successful. So, Kevin, welcome.
How you doing?
So I have to tell you, I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to celebrities. I've talked to, very, very smart business people, but very few have what I consider as an inspirational story as you have. And the reason for that, and the reason I say that is because there were times where you thought that was it. You were done. You weren't going to live past certain points. Yeah. And you were able to get yourself out of those situations through the help of a community and family, and then end up owning and operating a business that is extremely successful, that's growing, and is doing fantastic. Rather than me starting to tell your story, why don't you just start us off and tell us, how did you end up starting in a life of crime in 7th grade?
So the neighborhood I come from, there were several, people in that neighborhood that were very, very well known in town. They drove all the fancy cars. They wore the jewelry. They had the clothes. Yeah. I am the youngest of three. Mm-hmm. There's a span of about 5 or 6 years between my next sibling. Mm-hmm. So growing up, of course, they were pretty much doing their own thing. The age gap was so drastic, they, really didn't have a lot of time for me. So most of my life, or my time, I spent outside. Got it. So it was the guys in my neighborhood that became my, guys that I looked up to. Okay. So that's kind of how it started.
Did someone ask you to, run a drug order or something? Like, what was that first, I guess, experience?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. So it was a thing of, in the neighborhood, you had guys that you looked up to. They were, a lot older than me, but those were the guys that I followed. Mm. So just talking to them, it would be, well, hey, let me know what you want to do. And at one point I decided, so around maybe, like I said, around the 7th grade, I started kind of, playing around a little bit, just kind of getting familiar. Just nothing serious, but some change here. It's a little bit of change there. And as time went on, going into high school, it got a little more serious and a little more focused, and I started doing more things. Once I came out of high school was when it really, really went left.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by left? Because when I went into high school, smoking weed and stuff like that was like, next level. So I imagine you're talking something different.
Yeah. So I remember 9th grade year, that summer I went out. I was going to play football in high school. Okay. I practiced all summer. And then the very first day of school, I remember saying to myself, yeah, well, I guess I'm not going out there today. The street is calling me. So if I'm in school all day, I can't spend a whole lot of time on the football field. So here I go. And I never went back. I never played one game. I never practiced another day after that. Because like I said, during the day, I went to school. I always went to school. High school was simple. It was easy. It wasn't anything hard about it. So, and I had a lot of fun in high school. So I would, go to school every day, but when it was time to leave, I was gone. Yeah, I was gone. I had stuff to do. I had somewhere to be, and I was out of there. So sports just came second to everything else. It just wasn't for me. So
got it.
I don't know.
Now, I'm assuming you experienced some dangerous situations through all that.
Oh man, I have. I remember I was probably about 16, maybe 17, somewhere in that ballpark. And I remember being at a house party, and just there and, dancing with this girl, and somewhere along the line, I guess a couple guys there, they went and she had a boyfriend.
Okay.
Well, he's walking in the door and I'm walking out of the door, and he puts a gun to my head. And the only thing that saves me is that gun jammed that day.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he really intended to kill me right there.
Wow.
And like I said, the gun jammed. I was able to get out of there. And that was like one of the many stories that, many things that took place, as I was growing up. A lot of just gunfights in the middle of the day. Stuff just happened. You just saw that stuff. It was normal. And it was in my neighborhood, it was kind of a quiet neighborhood. So people would move. I would always laugh. People would move into the neighborhood and they'd say, "Oh, it's a nice neighborhood. And, it's real quiet." And by the time the summertime came, they were ready to get out of there because somebody was, I don't know, they might have found somebody on their steps dead or something to that. It just was crazy, and you would never expect it in the neighborhood. It just, like I said, it's a lot of homeowners in the neighborhood. It was a really quiet neighborhood. It was a really nice neighborhood. I moved in, maybe sometime in the early 80s. I was probably 7 when we moved in that neighborhood.
Gotcha. Now, I got to be honest. Most people, if they have a gun to their head and it jams, that's usually the moment they say, I'm getting out of this.
It's part of the life.
I'll say you stayed in it, though, so there had to have been something you enjoyed about it.
It was just...
Or was it just habit? Was it just habit?
At that time, you're young, so stuff like that you don't take as serious. As you get older and you pick up responsibilities, things like that tend to be a little more, you look at it a little different then. But then I was young. It's just me, no responsibilities for anything but myself. And it just, to me, that was just another day in my neighborhood. That was my life. So it didn't make a difference to me one way or the other. It's just,
Got it.
Yeah.
Got kind of like a contractor that works outside just say, "Hey, I'm going to get sunburned."
Yeah,
that's just the way it is.
That's part of the job.
Just part of the job. Interesting. So here you are. You're in high school. You're now out of high school. You're going into career. I guess. Well, I would call it career development. Yeah. How did you? I assume you grew somehow in the lifestyle you were in.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
So I met some people from different places, and after that kind of slingshotted me forward into, I don't know, I guess I kind of, I gotta be careful with that, but I met some people from some different places, and that kind of helped me. And like I said, the neighborhood I came from, a lot of those guys in that neighborhood were some of the bigger guys in town. So that's what kind of really helped me. I was always, most of them looked at me as a little brother, and I always had, I guess, what you would call good credit. I was, I never really ever had to spend money. It was always kind of given to me, and it was a thing of it, they knew that I would be able to get rid of it, and the money would be there. So that's kind of what, and then it got to a point where it was like, hey, well, see what you can do with this. And then it would increase, and then it would increase until it got to a point where it was like, okay, wow, like.
It sounds almost like any other job. You had a mentor. They would give you more responsibility. You would, perform well, and then they'd give you more responsibility, and almost like you're promoted through the ranks. Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. That's pretty much how it took place. I became something different. In town. Knew more people, and you kind of become very popular.
So I have to ask, was the money good?
It was. It was. It really was. I've had times in my life where, sometimes things were bad. They were. It just depended on what was going on. But when they were good, they were really good.
Gotcha.
And I lived, very well. I was able to do a lot of things. The only issue with a lot of that is, you get caught in a situation where you have more money than you can do stuff with.
How so?
Well, if I want to buy a house, I'm only good for what I can show on paper. Well, I don't show anything on paper.
Oh, I see.
You understand what I'm saying? So at the time, my wife always kept her job.
I see.
And, everything that we were able to do was because of what she could show on paper. You know, cars, that was something different. You could pay cash for cars, but, you know, different things, like I said, like a house, that wasn't something that you could just, you know, you had to be able to show where that money came from. I couldn't show it. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said you had a wife that always kept the job. That meant that through a lot of this, you were married, right?
I guess you would say married. We were together probably 14 years. Well, yeah, 14 years before we actually got married.
Okay.
And a lot of that was me. That was just a maturity thing.
Got it.
She had been ready. We were playing house. When we got together, I had 2 children, so she raised my kids, and so yeah, I guess we were married the entire time, just not on paper until 2010.
Okay.
No, 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, she's listening, so she.
Yeah.
You got to get that right.
2012. So, but yeah, she always stayed in my corner. She always pushed me to do more. And the crazy thing about it is, like, I've been to school for everything. Like, in my spare time, I would go to school.
Really?
So, I've computer information systems. I have a Class A CDL. I've had it since I was 19. I've never used it. Mortuary science. I had a life and health license, property and casualty license, building construction. Like I said, you name it, I've probably been to school for it. I actually owned a bail bond. I want to say I opened in 2004. It's called One Call Bail Bond. And I did that because I actually had got in some trouble, and I said, geez, I'm sick of giving my money. I might as well open one of my own, and that's what I did. And I actually did pretty well with it. I was surprised. One year, I actually took that year off and just focused on the bail bond, just to see if I could.
See if it was viable?
Yeah, and it did okay. You know, it was okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't, what I was used to, and of course.
Yeah. So what happened that sparked this transition?
I got a phone call one day from a friend, and he said, hey, this company that I work for has a job that would be perfect for you. And I said, I'm not looking for a job. He said, sure you are. I said, no, I'm not. He said, well, if they'll meet with you today, will you come see him? I said, sure. I mean, I said, does it matter? I said, I have on basketball shorts and a white T-shirt. He said, it doesn't matter. So I met this guy. I met him at an apartment complex. They were doing some work there that day. And they did multifamily renovations. It was a company. They did a lot of work up and down the East and West Coast. Okay. At the time, the guy that I met with, he was probably like the number 3 guy in the company. And he was a black guy, and he was actually from California. And he was a street guy.
Okay.
So, our conversation, we hit it off like right away. Normally when they hired people to the company, they sent them to a temp agency first, which his cousin actually owned. And he said to me, man, I like you. He said, I want to hire you straight to the company. I said, well, that sounds good, but I haven't said I want a job yet. So he said to me, well, let me tell you what I'm going to pay you. And he offered me 6 figures to do the job. And I said,
now, just out of curiosity, was that high or low? Okay.
Low 6.
And no, I mean, compared to what you were used to, is that low?
Low.
Oh.
And I said to him, well, you're going to pay me that to do what I do every day, tell people what to do? That's simple.
Yeah.
So I said, okay.
It was a management position then?
Yeah. So he hired me as a project manager. This was a Tuesday. Like, it's crazy. Like, I remember everything within this situation. And this was a Tuesday. And I told him, I said, Sunday I'm leaving. I'm taking the family on a cruise to the Bahamas. I'll be gone a week. I said, when I get back, I'll be ready. He said, well, that's fine. He said, it's going to take me a couple of weeks. He said, I'm going to, push everything forward because I really need you here soon. But it'll take me a couple of weeks to get everything done. So I left that Sunday, came back the following Sunday. A couple days after that, I got a phone call early in the morning, and something had happened. And I was like, wow, you got to believe me. And, people that I'm, relatively close to, and like the last 15 or maybe 20 years, I have been watching this happen like over and over again. I said, man, oh my goodness. I said, something has to give. So
need a lifestyle change.
Yeah. So September 6th, 2016 was my first day on the job as a project manager. They stuck me in a apartment complex out here in Owens Mills. And from that point, I went on. I started working. And from about 2016 to 2020 the beginning of 2020, I stayed with that company. 2018, I got introduced to what I do now, what is called PRP, Psychiatric Rehabilitation Program.
Okay.
And I started out as a subcontractor for a company, and I was doing that and running up and down. At the time, I was doing a project in Virginia Beach and one in New York. So I was running up and down 95, so I really didn't have a lot of time to spend dealing with it. And then when I would come in town, I was trying to deal with the family. So I remember just saying, like, I can't do this. And like I said, a good friend of mine, we like family. He kept saying, yes, you can. He says, it's no different than what you did for years. You coach sports. It's the same thing. Just now you're going to get paid for it. I said, I don't know, man. It just didn't seem like it was going to work for me. So right around 2019, I ended up meeting this doctor, and we kind of formed a partnership where he had these clinics that he needed counselors in. He allowed me to put counselors in his clinics. And at the time, like I said, I was still, doing a subcontractor thing, and I was only in one clinic at the time. As we got to kind of know each other, he opened up to the fact that he had other clinics. And so, of course, he said, well, if you want to put them in, sure, So I think I put counselors in maybe 2 other clinics at the time. Right around 2020 is when I decided that I was ready to come out on my own.
Branch out.
Yeah, a few things had happened, and I just decided that this was the time to do it. A friend of mine in the building that I'm in upstairs does the same exact thing I'm doing. He said, hey, there's some room in the building that I'm in. And he introduced me to Mike and Tony, and they sent me a lease. So I leased like 2 suites in that building, and I started the process. It took me 11 months to get the doors up and get the company up and running. And say July 1 of last year was my official day open. And from there, it's just been amazing.
So 2 years
like I said, I spent 11 months trying to get everything up and running. And maybe 2 months into it, I had made all the money back that I spent. The company was already profitable. Yeah.
Excellent. So it sounds like there's a lot of parallels, honestly, in I'll say management between what you did in your previous life and what you're doing now. Yeah. And you probably didn't expect that, did you?
No, honestly, I didn't expect to be where I'm at all. Like I told you, I never thought that I would ever be anything but somebody that was in the street. I was a felon. Last year, I was able to clean that record up, which I never thought would happen. I found out in 2017, they changed the law. If you had a felony conviction with, it was a possession with intent to distribute, you could get it expunged. Prior to that, you had to have a governor's pardon. So I was able to get it expunged. I did all the paperwork and dropped everything off at the courthouse, and the letter came in the mail that it had been approved. And that for me was a moment that was like, wow, like it's. I had to kind of sit back and maybe take a breath and kind of take it, because I never thought that I would ever be anything other than that. That's just what I felt like. That was the cause that I was dealt, and that's just how I was going to live. Well, I was able to get a permit to carry, which Wow.
Yeah.
Life is just a lot different.
It's different.
My stress level is different. I wake up every day and it's like, I'm not, you're not worried about anything. I'm not worried about whether, someone's going to come for me. Like, I've been with, they tried to kidnap me before, and I've been through a few things. So, just not worrying about that is just
it's a lot of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, and something in this, I know we're running out of time, so this will be my last question. Okay. But you literally changed the entire trajectory of not only yourself, but also your family. And what does it mean to you to be able to look your wife and your kids in the eye and say that we can do this, and we can do it in a way that I didn't think possible, 10 years ago?
It means everything to me. Actually, two of my children actually work for me. I have nieces, nephews, my brother. I was able to have my wife leave her job, which is something for me was a major accomplishment. In one hand, I'm kind of an old-fashioned guy. On the other hand, I'm not. I believe in, being a provider. I believe in being a protector. And in my eyes, is the stress of taking care of the family, the bills, that should be my worry and not hers. I love the fact that she's able to be home and, if housewife is what you want to be, or she jumped into real estate. And, if that's what you want to do, it's fine, but it's something that you want to do. It's not something that you have to do. And that means everything to me. My children are, I'm home. They're not worried about whether, I'm going to go to jail today or not, or if I'm even going to make it home. Yeah. That worry is gone. So that means everything to me. So, like I said, we are a very, very tight-knit family. We do everything together. We vacation together. My older children, I have two that's still, in a home, and the other ones aren't, but they're there all the time. And we just, it's everything to me. Yeah. I get this, my grandkids, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's inspirational, man. Like I said, from the streets, almost murdered, tried to be kidnapped, a lot of different things, to having a successful business with an entrepreneurial attitude. I really appreciate you joining. So everyone,
thank you so much.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. And Kevin, it's great to see you.
As always. And thanks for having me.